have to really be here to see and feel and understand what a race against time means. In every direction, there are groups of people working through the search and rescue operations. In that direction, there's a live search and rescue going on. The family members are sat by a fire. They've been saved. Underneath rubble is their loved ones. They're eagerly waiting to find out. You see everywhere around us, in each direction we look, there's destruction. There is consideration that this area, No Dege, will be completely destroyed because all of the buildings require a complete knockdown and start again because they're no longer safe. This has a population of 50,000 people, and the urgent support is needed to help shelter them, provide them with vital life-saving assistance. We're doing what we have to. We're working around the clock, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to ease the suffering and to open our hearts. And we're asking you, please, brothers and sisters, give generously to help us support those who are most in need.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everybody. My name is Preacher Moss, host of the SOS, the Shout Out Show. Hope that you are having a fabulous Wednesday. Midday, hump day. It's always interesting because it's such a gauge how we look at the week, really between Monday and Friday, and we don't really look at Saturday and Sunday because those are our free days. But I just thought, and bringing out the show, I thought it'd be really, really interesting to just talk about a few things that are going on. Number one, we still need to take a look at what's going on in Turkey and Syria. What is happening right now while we have, alhamdulillah, this really massive outpouring of generosity of funds and relief and food and things like that. There's a second wave that's happening. This is something that I bring up because it didn't happen in Haiti. It's really looking at the infrastructure, the social political infrastructure that has to be in place to give these people the relief, the long-term relief that they really, really need. And while we have a lot of people on the ground, those people on the ground are going to be there for a bit of time. Alhamdulillah, may Allah bless them. But they're going to leave. And when they leave, a lot of times what they leave is some of the problems that are pre-existing. Some of the issues of Syrian refugees, some of the issue of war, oppression that were actually coming from Syrian governments, the ineffectiveness of building some of the buildings that collapsed, things that we really need to look at. And of course, in the long term, the long arc, we're looking at the quality of life for the adults, the quality of life for children, what's going to happen with education, what's going to happen with opportunities, and being able to give people a legitimate chance of life after a major catastrophe. This is really, really important because our topic today is about not just emotional availability, but I'm giving you emotional availability through I'm a huge fan of Wayne Shorter. Wayne Shorter, before he passed, was recognized as the greatest living music composer in the world. His life is exemplary of how we begin to move, if you will, if you step back from the commercialization of life that's presented to you. The cavalcade of people that tell you that you can't do something, the people that tell you that the opportunity in front of your eyes or is not the opportunity that's actually there, but it's only an opportunity unless if they can impact it. In somehow, some way, they can have some type of ownership over really your decisions, your blessings, your opportunities, and so on. Losing Wayne Shorter really hurts. And we're going to get into the show. But it really hurts because we are in a space where we are running out of people who are master creatives. We're running out of people who legitimately have dedicated their lives to the uplift, the perfection, and the sharing of their craft. In music, it becomes more and more difficult because I feel bad for current musicians because a lot of them are tied into things like your record sales or your social media following and things like that, things that have nothing to do with the art in and of itself. So we're going to take some time with Wayne Shorter, and inshallah, I'm going to connect it to this whole idea of emotional availability. Why did I say emotional availability? Because most of the time when you hear that, people automatically think being emotionally unavailable. So in the ode and the tip of the cap to my dear mentor, he never mentored me directly, but some of his philosophy was just amazing, and it played out in his music. It's literally rare to see someone talk and talk about a philosophy of something, and you can hear the music jumping out of the words. Wayne Shorter is that person. So I'm hoping in this little bit of time that we have that I'm going to be able to introduce Wayne Shorter to you, and inshallah, you will be able to move forward and do your own research. I say do your own research, but I'm saying create the apparatus for your own journey. Okay? So we're going to take a quick break. We're going to start the show officially. You're here with Preacher Mars here on the SOS. Thank you for being here. We'll be right back. All right, we're back. Before we get started, I want to give a shout out to a very special person who's actually on the podcast today. I want to give a shout out to my friend Jeff Carroll, better known as Jeffrey Carroll. This man was amazing. He had a company called RBG, Red, Black, and Green Promotions. He was the first, I want to say, one of the first black college agents that I ever recognized, and he was a pioneer in bringing spoken word to the college campuses. You know, you see all the things now like Def Poetry Jam and things like that, iterations like that. But this was a guy that brought it to the colleges. He was a pioneer and a visionary in that space. Jeff, man, welcome to the platform, man. I pray that you and your family are doing well. Nobody else get upset. Jeff, we have what we call the Shout Out Show family, and you are definitely a part of the Shout Out Show family. It's ironic that you get on here that start talking about pioneers, talking about Wayne Shorter and his whole aspect of philosophical understanding of emotional availability. Man, we appreciate you. He's not just an entrepreneur. He's a writer. He had a cartoon. He did some amazing stuff. So let me just get out there and give that to my main man. Assalamu alaikum to my main man, Jeffrey Carroll. Okay. So I know you guys hear the phone. I can't take the phone off because I'm waiting for a call from my mom's rehabilitation center. So forgive me. I'll try and work it out later, but that's the way it goes. Sorry. But my mom says hello too. I thought she was going to tune in. All right. So we get all these calls anyway. All right. Satana, I can't do anything. Satana can't do anything either because she's locked in the closet in the basement of her house. All right. So let me go ahead and give some shout outs. I want to give a shout out to Sister Ree. Ree, how are you doing? Shout out to Ree, Derek, and Juwan. And inshallah, you're doing well. We pray that you're doing well. You're feeling better. Ree had a little situation. We hope that you're feeling better and pray for your recovery, pray for your relief. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. You know, it's not a shout out show without Sister Ree. Check it out. Okay. Also, I want to give a shout out to my main man, Altaf. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dear brother, good to see you. Tuning in all the way from Toronto, Canada, better known as our Canadian envoy to the SOS. Good to see you, man. Peace and blessings to you and your family. Also, I want to give a shout out to Johnny L. Thomas, better known as JT. JT, congratulations again. JT got a new gig, working as a federal auditor. Much love for that, man. And we probably gonna have to still get in the drug business to pay that college bill for my nephew. But by the way, my nephew got accepted to Yale. So anybody else want to get in the drug business to pay his tuition, please join us. Satani, if you ever get out of the closet in the basement, feel free to jump in. Right. All right. Also, want to give a shout out. Eric Carter, what's going on, beloved? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to you, man. Appreciate you. Thank you so much for tuning in. Want to give a shout out to Brother Bilal, Sister Sonia, all the way from Houston, Texas. Wa alaikum assalam rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Appreciate you, big brother. And I also want to give a shout out to our executive producer. We can't do anything without her. Of course, that would be Miss Satana Whitfield. For those who didn't tune in, last week we had a great time in Bloomfield, New Jersey with the masjid and the people up there. It was a beautiful time, just connecting with people. And International Women's. It's the month, right, Satana? It's the day. It's only one day. Okay, celebrate International Women and Women. Period. There you go. I think I covered it all. All right. So let me cue this up. Jazz legend Wayne Shorter passed March the 2nd, 2023. He was in his 80s. He had some health issues. When you get in the 80s, you're going to have some health issues. But my thing about Wayne Shorter is that he provided a bit of a compass for a slew of jazz artists that came after Miles, that came after John Coltrane, the guys that came out of the, if you will, um, the bebop era into the smooth, not even smooth jazz, but the birth of cool era, which was elongated notes and things. And the thing that made him special was that he was a composer. And listening to a podcast that he did with Questlove, what was really, really interesting was the fact that this man told everybody that he didn't grow up, a musician at 3 and 4 and 5 years old. He didn't do that. He said he didn't really come into it till almost his mid to late teens. And what he did was he used to skip school a lot. So follow me here. He used to skip school a lot. And he used to go to a show. They used to have these matinee shows. They don't have them anymore. And the matinee show would be a movie, and then they have a live band. And some of these bands would feature prominent up and coming artists like Dizzy Gillespie and Lee Morgan, and not Lee Morgan, but Dizzy Gillespie and some other people. And it was interesting because he would actually want to play those songs, but he didn't have an instrument. So he got what he called a little submarine thing. And the submarine thing was interesting, sort of like a recorder, but he would play boo 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 boo. We go around the neighborhood playing these things. And what was interesting in the interview was he said he would take the little recorder to the shows and he would listen to the sounds and he would finger them on his little submarine thing. And eventually his mom and his grandmom got him they got him it was a clarinet. It was a clarinet, and the person that sold him the clarinet recognized the talent, told him, don't just play the clarinet, play the saxophone. That way you can get paid more. Of course, there's some union stuff. But what happens is this man evolves into a bit of an iconic composer. He's sort of like Forrest Gump, if you will, like a jazz Forrest Gump. And what I mean by that is this is a guy who actually fit in at so many phases of jazz history. Sitting in, he starts with the Jazz Messengers. He goes to Jazz Messengers. He goes to Miles. He goes to the Weather Report. He is a spiritual buddy, a spiritual twin of Herbie Hancock. So if you begin to understand that, you begin to understand there's a lot of music that's happening. And he was a devout Buddhist. Now, before people go, oh my God, a Buddhist, I'm going to jump off. No, we're not talking about that. We're talking about for a man who lived 80-some years old, 80 plus years, who developed during the time of segregation, who developed during the time of forced integration, who took the whole aspect of music not as the primary player, but as the primary learner. He was, plain and simple, he was one of the best jazz musicians of his age. Not playing, but also just the idea that he composed music. He just got a Grammy he just got a Grammy actually for a jazz album he did at the Detroit Jazz Festival, like 2017. You've got to listen to it. I wish I could play it on here, but I just want everybody to understand this the gravity of the person I'm trying to introduce you to. I think I'm probably doing a bad job, Satana, but I'm trying to do my best. I'm going to show everybody a little interview with Wayne Shorter. Satana, you want to bring that up? Just a little interview with Wayne Shorter, and I just listen for like 2-3 minutes, and I'm gonna build on it, and I'm gonna build out the argument that he makes was the whole idea of emotional availability. Okay, cool.
You know, it's too much information. I can see now, for me, I see the world is in a place, on a cliff. We're all on a cliff, a precipice, a cliff where no one really knows what's going to happen tomorrow. People tell us, what's going to happen. The newspapers, they try to maybe influence how we think so they can predict what we're going to do tomorrow to make money on their predictions. But now with the internet and all this social media stuff and countries and cultures converging and ideas converging, interacting in ways that are unexpected, I think we are as human beings being forced to learn how to negotiate the unknown creatively. And a lot of us say, I am not creative. I don't sing, I don't dance, I'm an accountant. But I think the whole world, we have a singularity approaching us in life. Humanity is now beginning um, to see what it's like to negotiate without rehearsal, with no script. And that means people who follow, the masses of people who have been historically trained to be followers, have to begin to be leaders. As individuals, leaders. The following kind of makes you a subject to wanting to be someone else. You follow someone else's life, follow someone else's commands, rules, follow the fashion, follow someone else's whim, follow someone else's fame, fortune, and even in an ugly way, follow someone else's misery. Like shootings in high schools in the United States, Columbine, following that. That's a long way from being a leader. I guess some of the people who shoot, they think they're leaders. But this challenge we have of negotiating the unknown, the unexpected, is a challenge for us to call on and draw upon our inner life condition. For instance, I think like in school when some children, one child does terrible homework and the teacher says, one teacher says, why don't you use the brains that God gave you? The other teacher, another teacher would say to the same person, same little boy or girl, why don't you try to use your potential?
So you get um, so you get an idea of what he's talking about in terms of emotional availability. This is a really big show for me because I try to live this as much as I can, and we've talked about some of the themes. But these are some of the guys I learned from. A lot of my mentors were artists. A lot of my mentors were people who were heavy creatives. A lot of my mentors were people who literally took their potential to the next level, to the point that it inspired other potential. Wayne Shorter is in the pantheon of all the great jazz artists. But he's also in the pantheon of all the great jazz artist philosophers who, in this space, talking about potential, unlock aspects of music that led to some of the greatest jazz bands and some of the greatest music that ever been played. Music that was so profound and complete, even Miles Davis said, I can't do anything with that. It's perfect. Don't touch it. When we get into these spaces and these conversations that we don't really have enough of, we get into the profundity of thinking that we are emotionally unavailable to our own creative merits and our own potential because we are in a bubble whereby we're surrounded by people who don't see the value in exploring potential. Now, listen, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to be right back, and we're going to continue this subject matter. Don't you go anywhere. Preacher Moss, this is a ShOUT Show. We'll be right back.
Hey, babies. Welcome to Radio WCUC, Convenient Urgent Care, home of the smart patient. This is DJ What It Do. You know what time it is. It's the top of the hour, and the request lines are open. You know what you want to hear. I know what you want to hear. Operators are waiting.
I just gotta hear Don't Get the COVID.
Don't get the COVID. Put your mask back on. The Delta COVID, more contagious than before. Don't get the COVID. Go on and get the vaccine. You know that it can keep you safe. And your people living up in your space. Don't get the COVID. You need to wash your hands. The Delta COVID is more deadly than before. Don't get the COVID. Go on and get your vaccine. You know that it can keep you from dying. Don't leave your family all alone and crying. Don't get the COVID.
We invite you to join our fight against COVID and against misinformation. It's time to listen to the doctors and trust the science.
When I think of people dying that don't have to die, it makes me sad. Now's the time to be sober. Together we can make this thing over. Let's fight the COVID. Convenient urgent care, home of the smart patient.
All right, we're back. Want to give a shout out to Brother Haroon. Wa alaikum assalam rahmatullah barakatuh, beloved. Good to see you on the show. Hope you and Harris are doing well, man. Peace and blessings to your families. Nice to see you in the spot. Haroon is an aspiring rap artist, writer, entrepreneur. I just watched a little clip of him going overseas to Pakistan to shoot his video. Much love, man. I hope it was successful. So let me get back to this idea that's kind of been broached by Wayne Shorter. In music, there is a conceptual knowledge of something that's called improvisation, or as he says, the unexpected. It's two ways to address the unexpected. You can go looking for it, which is not forced, but you can go looking for it, or you can let the situation find you. Neither one are bad. Neither one are predictable. These are natural things. In a strategic sense, what's happened over the last couple of years, we can talk about elections, we can talk about policies, we can talk about war. But what we need to talk about is the overall and general groundswell of people who do not look to engage their own potential. Brother Shorter was right about the two teachers. Why don't you use the brain God gave you? He said, why don't you use the potential? The brain that God gave you is a very general statement. It's not a command. Think is a verb, but it's not necessarily an action verb unless it's connected to something. Potential speaks to connectivity. It speaks to kinetics. Potential is I have to start looking and forecasting and being able to predict what a situation may bring or may not bring. It moves to the space of talking about the unexpected. Time and time again, and I can vouch for this because I've been on both sides of it. Time and time again, there is a space where we find ourselves, and we may not find ourselves creative, not because we're not creative, but we feel that the groundswell or the reaction to our creativity may be negative. A good teacher, a great teacher, my sixth grade teacher, I always talk about Miss Alveda Jones. She said to me one time, and I'll never forget this. This is after I graduated sixth grade. We were kind of cool. She talked to me about being in the seventh grade, and she said, "Are you conditioned? And how are you conditioned?" She said, "If you're running down the street and someone you didn't know, someone you had no familiarity with, and they just yelled stop, would you stop? Would you look at all the variables that I just talked about? They didn't know you, you've never met them before, you have absolutely no responsibility, fiduciary responsibility to these people. If someone yelled stop, would you stop in the scope of I somehow have to pay homage to your whim?" This is what Brother Shorter is talking about. That somehow, some way, we've devalued this process whereby we tend to lend ourselves, hear me now, we lend ourselves to people who are not necessarily in a space where they have a creative process. A lot of times, many of us will stop and not do something because someone said, I don't want to do it, or they said, do it later. Or they said, I don't like it. At some point in time in the conversation, you let them talk you out of what you potentially could have done. Not fully understanding they didn't have the potential to do it in the first place. They didn't know how to do it. So the only thing they could do is give you a particular type of resistance where you shut down your own creativity. This process of the shout out show, because I was on the phone earlier today talking with somebody, and it was really interesting because we were talking about sponsorships and and they went to, social media numbers, They never asked, do you have a good show? They never asked, do you have a quality show? Do you have good subjects? Do you have good guests? It wasn't about that. It was, what can we get on a return, a success return on? If we give you $5,000, it's because we expect to make $30,000. And I said, can you repeat that for me one more time? They said, we want a success return. If I give you Preacher Moss $5,000 for the shout out show, it's only because we think we're going to be able to get $60,000, which means that the markup is giving you $24,000 over what you gave me. And I'm like, you know what? Maybe I don't want to do the sponsorship with you because clearly, in my mind, I can do better than what you're giving me without having all the expectations. I can find people who will ask the question, do you have a quality show, and want to advertise on a quality show. Why am I saying that? Because if I was in a space about emotional unavailability as opposed to emotional availability, I would have been in a place where I'd have been in a funk, and I would have been, in some regards, bad-mouthing or backbiting these people for telling me nothing more than the truth of how they do business, as opposed to appreciating them sharing their model and allowing me to make a decision. Years ago, as a comedian, I'll be honest, I used to let people tell me how funny I was And in them telling me how funny I was, I didn't really understand that they were shaping my career. Hear what I'm saying? They were shaping my career, whereby instead of paying me this amount to work this show, they were like, oh, it should be this. And one time I was doing a show, and the headliner, let's just say, I was giving him the business that weekend. And the headliner went to complain to the owner of the club. And the owner of the club said, well, what's the problem? He said, well, he does this, he does that. And the owner of the club said, well, I'm paying you this amount. I'm paying him that amount. Hear what I'm saying? The headliner goes, well, pay him more and tell him not to do this, and then the show will be okay. Pay him more not to explore his potential, and we'll be okay. Owner was okay. Headliner was okay. I wasn't okay. And from that point forward, and I was also been at a very young age, I've always had an aversion to working for people. Not because I think that I'm the smartest person in the room. I know the most. But I'm the smartest person about me. I know the most about me. And if that's the case, then I should be able to take myself around to whatever markets I want to go to. This has been the process. This has been the jazz man's journey, the traveler's journey for a lot of years for people like myself. Also for people like you. Being able to pick up the gauntlet and move different places. My love of Wayne Shorter is that the fact that he looked at different movements in jazz, he sought them out. And whether he was proficient in those movements at the beginning or he mastered them at the end, it's the fact that he went understanding, I don't know exactly what to expect, but I'll know what I want when I see it. I know I'll be able to engage it when I see it, which had so much to do with a skill set. The fact that he had a skill set. The fact that the person that sold him the clarinet and told him to get the saxophone too and taught him on both, the fact that he told him that you can make more money playing two instruments, not understanding probably at that point in time that he would be a composer for symphonies, if you will. Grammy-winning albums, if you will. Isn't it amazing that he just got a Grammy for an album he recorded in 2017? How good is that album? And even more so, this whole idea, and I'm flipping it again, is emotional availability, because we have to get back to the point where we open ourselves up to new opportunities. I'm not saying anyone has to be creative. That is not the impetus here. We are talking about intentionality, going into new situations, new opportunities, and new experiences. The thing I love about jazz is you can't write the same song twice. Very much about comedy, you can't write the same joke twice. You can go around a different audience and say, I'm going to play this song, but you can only play it once. Because you can't go around and say, I'm playing a new song, because people go, I heard that song. In comedy, you can't go around and say, I just wrote this joke, knowing that you just did that joke a year ago. People know. And it's always the heightened aspect of surprise. The whole aspect of thematic engagement with the people that we're dealing with and the careers that we've chosen. Whether it be our families, our jobs, our aspirations, our education, you begin to understand that this is a wide open pantheon of things that we need to be looking at. Him as a jazz artist, I chose him, and why he's a jazz legend is he not only played beautiful music, brothers and sisters, he not only played with jazz legends, Lee Morgan, John Coltrane, Art Blakey, Miles Davis, Herbie Hancock, Chick Corea. He not only played with these people, but he modeled, if you will, that space. He modeled the space where he was available musically. And it carried over to him as a person because he's always talked about being emotionally available. A lot of times when opportunities come our way, we're not, I don't want to say mature, but we're not open enough to say, well, maybe this is something that I want to investigate. You know, there are so many stories of people who turned down opportunities because they didn't have the right amount of money. But did you have the right amount of knowledge? Did you have the right amount of intention? Did money have anything to do with the fact that you had an incredible work ethic? And sometimes we forget these things. Emotional availability is really, really important these days moving forward because we have weird things like cancel culture. And the damaging thing or the damning thing about cancel culture is the fact that it cancels potential. That if somebody did something or said something 3 or 4 years ago, we're stuck and we're mirrored in the fact that we have to look at that person in that space. This is not natural. You have to look at that person in that space. If I said something in 1973 that's inappropriate in 2023, people are going to tax me for what I said in 1973, meaning that they are canceling my potential to change, canceling my potential to educate myself, canceling my potential to grow out of this space, to actually have a nuanced understanding of that's where I was before, and therefore, alhamdulillah, this is where I am now, and being able to put that out there in the space. A marketplace of ideas that's been shut down, I want to say, for the last 7 years. Mrs. Short has said something, and I'm going to bring this up. I am not a person who is stuck on social media. Sadana, you know this. Here's the reason why I'm not stuck on social media. Because as a person that reads, like many of you read, people are not great writers. And the reason I know they're not great writers is so many times people have to turn to pictures. That we have to engage ourselves in pictures to get the story out. The TikToks, the Instagrams, the tweets, all are, I want to say, apparatus. Of course, it's a way to communicate, but it's a way to communicate in a minimalistic way. I always looked at Twitter as the best social media because Twitter had a letter count, if you will. And what I liked about it is you had to be able to say what you need to say effectively before the words came out. And I liked Twitter for a minute. I never really used it, but I liked it because it taught me or enforced or reminded me about the idea that there's an economy of words. And that economy of words is some of the things that are really, really important as we begin to understand more and more. It's like, where are we going to be? Much the same as Mr. Shorter talked about everybody being on a cliff. And that we have to now reframe ourselves as leaders, not followers. Imagine everybody on a cliff. 10 people on the cliff. They're standing there for hours. One guy jumps off. 2 guys jump off. Does that mean everybody has to jump off? Does that mean that was the only option? There's a space about what happens if you don't jump off a cliff. They have a thing called rock climbing. What if you figure out a way to climb down from the cliff? In a way, what is the probability that you're going to hurt yourself pursuing your own potential? Think about that. Because in the whole landscape, if you will, like we had some great guests on for Black History Month. I'll point to one. One of the best interviews had so much to do with potential. That was Mahmoud Abdul Rauf. In our private conversations, these are the things that we talk about. His scope from where he was as a youth, growing up poor in Mississippi, was the fact that being Black meant that someone had co-opted your potential. It was the thing that drove him. It was the thing that scared him the most. As good as things could be for him in the NBA, he thought that there was a potential that somebody could come and take it from him. If you watch his documentary, he always played ball so hard on the idea that there was a potential that his father may pick up the newspaper, see him, and come and see him play one day. And he'd be able to unite with his father. And I'm talking about Mahmoud in this way because many of us have those same feelings. I'm going to talk about this after the break. So, Tom, let's go ahead and take a break. I'll be right back here on the Shout Out Show. Don't you move.
You have to really be here to see and feel and understand what a race against time means. In every direction, there are groups of people working through the search and rescue operations. In that direction, there's a live search and rescue going on. The family members are sat by a fire. They've been saved. Underneath rubble is their loved ones. They're eagerly waiting to find out. You see everywhere around us, in each direction we look, there's destruction. There is consideration that this area, no Dege, will be completely destroyed because all of the buildings require a complete knockdown and start again because they're no longer safe. This has a population of 50,000 people, and the urgent support is needed to help shelter them, provide them with vital life-saving assistance. We're doing what we have to. We're working around the clock, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to ease the suffering and to open our hearts. And we're asking you, please, brothers and sisters, give generously to help us support those who are most in need.
All right, I want to give a shout out to my main man, L.A. Hardy. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Big brother, hope you're doing well. Very, very funny comedian. We will have him on the show after he finishes all of his boat dates. He's a big hit on the cruise lines. Beloved, good to see you in the spot, man. And shout out to my main man, Doug Robinson, sound man extraordinaire. Assalamu alaikum, Doug. Good to see you. Pray you and your family are well. So let me give you this story, because Wayne Shorter reminds me of this story. He used to wear these shirts. If you see some of his old, he used to wear these shirts, these t-shirts, and it was written on it, "Never give up." It would just say "Never give up," and I thought it was beautiful because it never really, wasn't specific. What are you giving up? It just said "Never give up," and it was more less and less about the action. It was more about the psychological impetus about never giving up. That you have to have a dogged pursuit for things that you think are important. But it also spoke to the fact of being ready. So this is a Sufi story from way back when. I love this story because it has to do with being ready. So I'm going to ask everybody to please bear with me because it takes a moment, but it has a very beautiful ending, and I think it's applicable to what we're talking about now. The story goes that there were two gentlemen who were in school to become scholars. So they entered the school to become Islamic scholars. And as time progressed, one went this way and one kind of stayed here. One went on to be a great world-renowned scholar, and the other guy wound up being a cook at the school. That's the level he had progressed to. He was a cook at the school. Now, there was no competition between the two. One was a scholar, one was a cook. So they got together. I think they're having dinner or something and lunch. And he has a sad, he has a sad look on his face. And the scholar looks to the cook and goes, "What's wrong?" He goes, "Well, man, I'm sitting here. We're getting older. I don't have a family." He says, "You're a scholar, and we came in at the same time. Look at you, man. You're big time. And look at me. I'm down. I'm a cook. I'm still a cook." And he goes, "Well, what does that mean?" He goes, I'm not satisfied with my station in life." And he goes, "Okay." He says, "I'll tell you what. If I can help you out, I can get you a position, I'm going to recommend you for that position." He says, "But the question I want to know before I do that is, are you ready?" And so the cook goes, "Of course I'm ready." He goes, No. Think. He goes, "Are you ready?" Because there's layers to this. He goes, "Yeah." He said, "Well, look, go ahead and cook, go back and get the meal ready for everybody. I'll be, just handle your business." So a day later, the cook is making a meal, and the scholar comes in. He goes, "Listen, a delegation came in from India. They need a new king, a new Maharaja. I just want you to know I recommended you. They accepted you as a new king." He goes, "Listen, let me work out the details, but are you ready?" He goes, "Of course I'm ready." He goes, "Listen, don't let the food burn." So he was just over cauldron, stirring and stirring and stirring and stirring. You look back, he goes, "Are you ready?" He goes, "Yeah, I'm ready." Stirring. And so he's getting ready to leave. He goes, "Listen, here are the terms. They're going to take you on as a king. My only request is half of what you earn as a king. Please give me half, and I'll give it to the poor. You keep the rest." He goes, "That's it?" He goes, "Yeah." They don't see each other for 25 years. And the king who used to be the cook, or the cook is now the king. He did well in life. He won a couple wars, acquired a lot of property, a lot of prestige, and at an advanced age, he even had a son. So one day he's sitting and he gets a message that the scholar is coming to visit him. The scholar is coming to visit the king who used to be a cook. The king gets nervous thinking he's here to collect his half. So he's like, well, tell him to come anyway. So the scholar comes to visit. Now the king, of course, he shorted him, made it look like he had less of what he actually had, so he had to give away less. And they're having a conversation and they have dinner and kind of general. In the morning they get up. The scholar is like, talking to the king. The king is like, okay, look, all of your stuff all the money is packed on those donkeys over there. You go ahead and take them, those camels. He goes, all right. He goes, yeah, you got your half. And so the scholar goes, well, let me talk to you about the half. He goes, what do you want? He goes, well, listen, you did well in life. You acquired land, you acquired property, you got married, you have a couple wives, you got a child. He goes, yeah. He goes, I'm your friend. We used to be the same people. He said, you're a king. I'm still a scholar. He goes, listen, you haven't even introduced me to you. He said, I heard you had a son. He said, where's your son? You haven't introduced him. He goes, hold on a minute. And his son comes out. And the scholar looks at him and goes, this is your son? He goes, yeah. He goes, listen, this is a good-looking young man. He takes out his sword. He puts it on the top of his head. And he goes, which side do you want? You want the left side or the right side? The king is like, what are you talking about? We split everything in half. Right side or left side? The king panics, takes out a knife, stabs the scholar, turns it to the right side, the left side blinked, and he was back over that cauldron cooking at the school. The scholar looked at him and goes, I guess you weren't ready. These are the stories that we need to be talking about. Valuing our opportunities to engage and embrace the unexpected. Meaning that people are not bringing us their problems. They're not bringing us their faults. We are going out looking for opportunities to engage ourselves. Are you ready, if you will? Because it's the difference between you being a cook and a king, a maid and a queen, a guy who plays on a little submarine and a guy that becomes one of the most prolific jazz artists in the world. And as we talk, emotional availability. Because if you break down the story I just told you, the king just could have asked the scholar, I don't understand. He could have just said, I didn't know that it applied to human life. He could have engaged his potential as opposed to engaging his fear. Emotional availability has so much to do, brothers and sisters, understanding that the unexpected isn't always bad, that there are good things. Oftentimes, we only talk about the bad things that happen when something's unexpected. We rarely talk about the good things because the good thing is what we want in the first place. The good things a lot of times don't require the investment in the investigation. That you don't have to build when good stuff happens to you, or luck happens your way, or somebody gives you a break. We're not doing that, brothers. This is a very important theme that we're talking about here, because I'm going to be harking on this all throughout Ramadan. And after Ramadan's over, I'm going to hark about it even more. That the Shout Out show is going to be a vessel where we can engage our potential as a host and an audience. Now, to do that, I do need you. But this journey moving forward is that we need to be able to have conversations. So for this point forward, I would like for people, if you can, get in the comment section. Ask questions. Don't be like the cook when you can be like a king. Sharing information. Sharing things that are unexpected. I think this is a really powerful notion, if you will. That as artists, we claim creativity because that's what artists do. We're vain. To be an artist, you have to quote unquote be creative. To be a comedian, you have to be funny. To be a musician, you have to play great music. This is very, very limited in spectrum, very, very limited in scope. What do you have to do to be an exceptional human being? What do you have to do to be an amazing parent? What do you have to be an amazing son or daughter? What do you have to be an amazing human being in a world where people are not focused on being amazing human beings? Fair questions. But fair questions can lead to great answers. And leading to great answers is where we want to be. Our guests that we have in Black History Month, they follow a particular pattern. That we had amazing questions for them, but they had amazing questions for us. And in between that, we got extraordinary and expository narrative that really left us in different places from where we started at the beginning of the show to where we ended. The idea of a Wayne Shorter, brothers and sisters, now that he's gone, and we'll give a shout out to Doug. Doug sent me the Spotify for his Grammy win with the Detroit Jazz Festival. And I think what's beautiful is that he used some of the same singers and musicians, but he challenged them, if you will, and they walked into the space knowing not necessarily what to expect. And it's something illuminating about that. It's something empowering about that. That I can walk in and I can have contingencies if something goes well and something goes poorly. But it's never a thing that I'm stuck because I didn't expect it. We have things, in life. We lean on things. Can you imagine if the sun didn't come up? Imagine the sun didn't come up or the sun didn't go down. That'd be totally unexpected. Our world will be wrecked. And just think about daylight savings time coming. There's gonna be some people. Their whole world gonna be wrecked for like 2-3 weeks because of an hour, brothers and sisters. Because of 1 hour. All right, I'm not gonna make jokes about those. I just learned not to fly on daylight savings time weekends, and it's not even that I miss my flights. I make my flights, but a lot of times, flight attendants don't make the flights, and I wound up being delayed. True story. So let me throw this out here to you, because I know this hour went really, really quickly. And just so you guys know, as Ramadan is coming in, a couple of things I want to shout out to you. We're going to be working with IslamicCity.com. IslamicCity.com, they're the leading website for Islamic content. The Shout Out Show is doing a partnership with them to do the 30 for 30. It's a 30-day challenge with Islamic City to love Allah more. How about that? To love Allah more. And they're going to open up their vast learning management systems. You can use information for Hadith, Quran. You can search it. It's free because I think it's important that Ramadan is coming down the way. It's like, you know what? We want to engage Ramadan in a way that it brings things to us that are unexpected. That in the spiritual nature and the spiritual expression of the holiday in and of itself, that we want to learn things about ourselves that we didn't know, that we can appreciate. Or if we can't appreciate them, habits that we need to get rid of. You see where I'm going with this. So let me, I'll be sharing that, guys, sharing that with you later. So I want to get to the wrap, if you will. Let me get to the wrap. I recently spoke to a very, very good friend of mine. Extremely good friend of mine. And he informed me of something I wasn't expecting about his lifestyle. And because I love this brother, I was stern that, you should have told me what happened. You shouldn't have waited this amount of time. I was miffed. Let's just say I was miffed because it's like I could have been a part of that solution. And I think more importantly, a part of a solution that it could have been a good thing, that it could have been something really, really positive and beautiful, a good thing. And I chastised my friend because I'm like, you automatically assume that if it's bad for you, then it's bad for everybody else. And in a way, I said, you restructured the potential of what this thing could have been. And I was upset about it. I was a little bit about it. But then I thought about what I was talking about right now. And I said, well, maybe the scope of it is he wasn't ready. That's number one. And two, we can't necessarily make people ready. You know, the thing that I have to remember from that clip from Mr. Shorter was the fact he said, we're in a space where the unknown is requiring us to reframe who we are as either followers or leaders. That the uncertainty, that there's no template for what we're going through, means that people have to reframe who they are for the particular situation, for the particular task, for the particular opportunity. In many ways, we have to be emotionally and spiritually available in some regards to the universe. That's what we like to say, to the universe, to this particular quotient of creation, if you will. But I think the thing that I really, really enjoy is that he never said anything about being fearful. He never said anything about being fearful. The great Herbie Hancock relayed a story about Miles Davis where he played a wrong note at a really, really, really big show. And he sat there cringing like Miles Davis is going to kill me. And he said Miles Davis heard the note, took his horn, played a little something. And what he did was he corrected Herbie's mistake. And then he went and gave his solo. And he said at that point, he realized it wasn't the right note or a wrong note. It was unexpected. Can we as individuals tip the balance, if you will, and begin to talk about the value of the unexpected, the value of the unknown? Understanding that the thing that's going to move us through that is the potential and the skills that we have in and of ourselves and how we think about those things. Can we get to that space? Hold on a minute. Oh, okay. I'm sorry, Doug. Doug had to correct me on. Thank you, Doug. Well, you sent me the album. I know you didn't record. I didn't do the sound on it, but I know you sent me the album on Spotify. I still appreciate that. Okay, so look, let's get a couple things straight. You guys know that Ramadan 30 for 30 is kicking off. We're looking at a tentative moon sighting either March 22nd or 23rd. At that point in time, we're going to downshift. We're going to be going, of course, 30 days in a row, but it's going to be 30-minute shows. We're not going to be doing 30 hours of content. Look at Satana. Alhamdulillah for that. We're not going to be doing that. But in that space, we're going to ask everybody, we're going to be very, very particular about this, that you should go to permissiblelaughter@gmail.com so we can do our virtual iftar. Get those out to me early. Thank you, Sister Satana, on top of it. You know the deal. Everybody gets a stipend for their meal. This year, I think we did 25. It'd be 30 this year. So everybody gets a stipend. And don't come up with new friends either. Hey, if you got a family, it's $30 for the whole family. But you know how it is. We're really engaged. We're looking to have everybody come back and be a part of this. In advance, I thank you guys so much for supporting our new format and what we're trying to do with the show. And in advance, we're looking forward to having you guys on. This is the 4th Ramadan 30 for 30. All right, everybody. Listen, that's my time. Be blessed. Keep Turkey and Syria, earthquake victims in your prayers and your du'as. Okay? See you guys next week. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Preacher Moss, shout out show.